There are moments in history when humanity doesn't receive an answer from the stars, it receives silence. A silence so deep, so synchronized, that it feels deliberate. When the object known as 3I, Atlas, approached Mars, astronomers expected a cascade of information, a celebration of discovery. Instead, they were met with a void. No data, no images, no statements. It was as if every nation capable of observing the event had agreed to press mute at the exact same moment. In the age of instant communication, this kind of global quiet felt unnatural, almost impossible. But it happened, and the longer it lasted, the more it began to sound like a message. Scientists had spent months preparing for this encounter. Every telescope, every orbital probe, every deep space radar had been recalibrated for this exact moment. The data would have been priceless, a chance to understand the nature of a mysterious interstellar object that had entered our solar system without warning. But what should have been a historic flood of scientific information turned into an information drought so complete that it raised a terrifying question. What did they see that they don't want us to know? NASA, the European Space Agency, and China's CNSA all went dark at once. For the general public, it might have felt like a temporary technical issue. For scientists, it was a nightmare. Even during catastrophic mission failures, data always leaks raw telemetry, partial readings, or at least an acknowledgement that something went wrong. This time, there was nothing. It was as if the sky itself had gone silent. The world's most advanced instruments had seen something, and then, suddenly, they hadn't. The first whispers began to spread through private research networks. Engineers noticed missing packets in data logs, transmission cuts that aligned too perfectly with 3I, Atlas's flyby window. Some believed it was politics, a government shutdown, funding freezes, the usual bureaucratic noise. But that explanation didn't hold up. Spacecraft don't shut off because politicians argue. Deep space networks don't stop receiving because someone in Washington falls asleep at their desk. The servers keep humming, the probes keep transmitting. The silence wasn't caused by failure, it was chosen. And when scientists choose silence, it's never random. It's because they've found something that demands it. NASA's official explanation came quickly, too quickly, some argued. A press release cited a federal funding freeze that had supposedly paralyzed communications. According to them, it was bad timing. The agency's public affairs systems were offline just as the flyby occurred. It sounded plausible enough for headlines, but inside the scientific community, no one bought it. A government shutdown may delay updates, but it doesn't erase data. The Deep Space Network continues to operate regardless of political noise. The spacecraft don't care who holds office, they follow physics, not policy. So, while the public was told that NASA's hands were tied, inside those closed laboratories, the analysis continued. Instruments kept collecting, signals kept arriving, and scientists kept watching only without saying a word. Then came Europe's response. The European Space Agency, usually proud of its transparency, quietly announced that its instruments were still under calibration. The phrase sounded routine but hid something stranger. Weeks passed, and still no results. No grainy previews, no test images, not even a numerical table. For those who know ESA's usual rhythm, that kind of silence was off script. When missions encounter delays, they communicate even cautiously. This time, they did not. The silence began to look like choreography. But it was China's reaction that truly chilled the world. Since 2021, China's Tianwen-1 orbiter had flooded the internet with over 14,000 high-resolution images of Mars landscapes, canyons, dust storms, everything. The country used these releases as propaganda and proof of technological superiority. Whenever NASA hesitated, Beijing accelerated. But this time, there was nothing. No photos, no statements, not even a mention. For a government obsessed with prestige, this sudden restraint was uncharacteristic and deeply unsettling. If there's one thing China never wastes, it's an opportunity to outperform America. So why stay quiet now, unless the truth was too heavy to weaponize? Experts started to notice a pattern. Every agency gave a different reason for the silence, but the timing was identical. The blackout began almost the moment 3I, Atlas, passed Mars. For those who analyze not just data but behavior, This wasn't a coincidence. This was coordination. And coordination among rival nations, especially in space, only happens under one condition: when they're all facing something none of them can explain. To understand why 3I Atlas triggered such fear, we have to go back to its discovery. When astronomers first detected it, it looked ordinary, a faint, fast-moving light cutting across the background stars. But as the numbers came in, the ordinary became impossible. Its composition was unlike anything we had seen before. Most comets and asteroids follow predictable ratios of ice, rock, and gas. 3I Atlas didn't. Its carbon dioxide levels were 8 times higher than its water vapor, a chemical fingerprint only found in the coldest, most distant regions of forming star systems. In other words, this thing wasn't born anywhere near here. Then there was the metal signature. When light from the object was analyzed through spectroscopy, it revealed an overabundance of nickel, but almost no iron. That might sound minor, but in astrophysics, it's revolutionary. Nickel and iron are cosmic siblings, forged together in the explosions of dying stars. Finding one without the other is like finding smoke without fire. It breaks the rules of creation itself. Some scientists quietly began to describe the readings as non-natural. Others refused to comment at all. And then came its movement. As it approached the inner planets, its trajectory didn't behave like that of a comet. Comets outgas, they release jets of vapor that push them off course slightly, causing tiny but measurable wobbles. 3I Atlas showed no such behavior. Its path was unnervingly precise, as if it were being guided by invisible hands. Even its brightness refused to change as it neared the sun, something that should be physically impossible. It moved through our solar system like a machine executing a program, calm, deliberate, unflinching. The strangest part came when scientists mapped its route. 3I Atlas sliced through the solar system at a perfect 5-degree angle to the ecliptic plane, passing improbably close to Venus, Mars, and Jupiter in what seemed like a geometric sequence. Statistically, that sequence should have been impossible. And yet it happened. Some began whispering about intelligent trajectories, paths chosen, not random. Others dismissed it as coincidence. But coincidence stacked upon coincidence eventually stops being coincidence. It becomes intent, and as the data accumulated, so did the fear. Because if even half of it was true, then 3I Atlas wasn't a comet, an asteroid, or a chunk of frozen rock. It was something built, something ancient, something that had been traveling for longer than humanity has existed and had chosen to pass through our cosmic neighborhood, close enough to be seen. As the blackout deepened, veteran researchers began whispering about an old policy few outside the scientific community even know exists: the post-detection protocol. Drafted during the early SETI era, it dictates what must happen if any credible evidence of extraterrestrial intelligence is found. The rule is brutally simple: no nation speaks alone. Every observation must be independently verified, peer-reviewed, and politically cleared before a single word is said in public. The purpose isn't deception, it's control. Imagine a headline screaming, "We're not alone." Before the data are confirmed, stock markets would collapse, religions would fracture, and conspiracy networks would burn the internet to ash within hours. Governments learned long ago that information travels faster than reason. So, when something appears that could reshape civilization itself, silence becomes the only defense mechanism we have left. Within the sealed command centers of Pasadena, Darmstadt, and Beijing, teams would have cross-checked the data line by line. Engineers would have rerun calibrations, simulated trajectories, remeasured light curves, and compared every possible natural explanation. Then, as each system reported the same result, a different kind of calculation would begin: political, not mathematical. Who announces first? Who takes the blame if it's wrong? Who takes credit if it's right? Under the protocol, they all must agree. An agreement, at that level, takes time measured not in hours, but in months. To the outside world, it looks like stillness. Inside, it's panic wearing the mask of procedure. Silence isn't empty here. It's full of voices arguing behind closed doors. For the public, that silence has become an obsession. Amateur astronomers scour open databases, decoding every missing byte in the telemetry streams. Radio enthusiasts record encrypted bursts coming from Mars orbit, bursts that line up perfectly with the windows when Tianwen-1 or the European orbiters should have been transmitting. They can't read the messages, but they can see them digital pulses whispering that the spacecraft are very much alive and very busy. The data exists, it's simply hidden. And when information is hidden, imagination rushes to fill the vacuum. Some claim 3I, Atlas emitted an unnatural rhythm in its reflected light, a pattern that repeated every 9 seconds, too regular for chance. Others believe its rotation axis shifted mid-flight, as if it had adjusted itself. A few even insist the object radiated weak bursts of radio energy structured, narrowband emissions that nature doesn't produce. None of these claims are verified, but all of them thrive in the dark. Without official word, speculation becomes its own science. Forums ignite, podcasts spiral into paranoia, and YouTube turns the silence into an endless echo chamber. Yet beneath the noise lies a simpler truth people sense when they're being managed. They feel the absence of honesty the way animals sense a coming storm. And the world feels it now, a tension in the air, a hum that no one can hear, but everyone can recognize. Among professionals, the debate has split into two camps. The first clings to skepticism. To them, 3I Atlas is an outlier, a statistical freak born of physics, not purpose. They argue that the nickel without iron anomaly could result from incomplete spectroscopy, that the flawless trajectory might just be the result of hidden outgassing balanced across its surface. They talk about calibration errors, cosmic rays, data compression artifacts. In their view, extraordinary claims still require extraordinary evidence, and evidence means open data, not rumors. Until the numbers are released, they refuse to believe. The second camp, the smaller but louder one, says skepticism itself has become a shield. They point to probability. The odds of every observed anomaly occurring together are astronomically low. Combine that with the synchronized global silence, and coincidence becomes impossible. They argue that the object behaves too cleanly, too efficiently, too deliberately to be a random rock. Some quietly call it a probe. Others go further, suggesting it could be a fragment of ancient engineering drifting through interstellar space, a relic from a civilization so old its creators may no longer exist. To them, 3I Atlas is not an intruder, it's an artifact, and our inability to accept that possibility, they say, reveals more about human fear than cosmic truth. Meanwhile, the object continues its march toward the sun, indifferent to the chaos it's caused. Comets normally flare as solar radiation vaporizes their frozen surfaces, creating long, luminous tails. 3I Atlas does none of this. It remains stable, smooth, almost arrogant in its refusal to perform. Its trajectory obeys gravity with surgical precision, its brightness unwavering, as if mocking every rule we know. For scientists accustomed to randomness, that perfection feels wrong. Nature stutters, machines don't. Each passing day without variation deepens the unease. Is it absorbing heat, reflecting it, adjusting itself to minimize drag? Every theory leads to more questions. Inside observatories, researchers whisper comparisons to Oumuamua, the first interstellar visitor detected years ago. That object too had strange acceleration and no tail, and it vanished before we could study it properly. 3I Atlas seems like its successor, only larger, brighter, more precise, as though following the same route on purpose. If the two are connected, then we aren't witnessing coincidence. We're witnessing pattern, and pattern is intention. The realization settles over the scientific world like frost. Maybe we were never meant to study these things closely. Maybe we're only allowed to notice them as they pass just long enough to understand that they're there, but not long enough to interfere. Michio Kaku, always the cautious visionary, commented indirectly during a lecture on theoretical civilization stages. He reminded his audience that Type 3 civilizations, those capable of harnessing the energy of entire galaxies, wouldn't need to communicate with us through radio waves or symbols. Their technologies would be subtle, gravitational, almost invisible. If they wanted to observe, he said, they wouldn't knock on the door, they'd watch from the shadows. Many listeners heard in his words a veiled reference to 3I Atlas. Perhaps it isn't a messenger at all, but a mirror, recording how a young, noisy species reacts to uncertainty. Kaku's point was unsettlingly pragmatic. Humanity isn't ready for confirmation. We're barely united on our own planet. Give us proof of something superior, and the foundations of belief, politics, and identity would crack overnight. Maybe that's why the agencies are quiet, not to deceive, but to buy time. Time to frame a narrative that won't set the world on fire. Time to prepare people for the idea that the universe might already be occupied. Silence, in this view, isn't suppression, it's sedation. The slow drip of nothing, meant to calm a species standing too close to revelation. Still, silence has limits. The longer it continues, the heavier it becomes. Within the scientific community, trust begins to erode. Junior researchers leak hints on encrypted channels, references to structured returns, to repeating albedo sequences, to controlled spin modulation. Each leak adds oxygen to the fire. Journalists chase ghosts, governments issue denials. Yet behind the noise, one truth endures: data were collected. The universe doesn't stop generating photons because a committee tells it to. Whatever struck those sensors around Mars is now stored in drives somewhere, studied, debated, locked behind clearance levels higher than most presidents ever see. And if the leaks are even partly real, they paint a haunting picture. A surface pattern repeating every few kilometers. Reflectivity changes that follow mathematical ratios instead of randomness. Tiny course corrections near perihelion, the point closest to the Sun, suggesting active control. Nothing conclusive, but enough to transform silence into suspicion. Because when information stops, rumor becomes evidence. People no longer ask if something extraordinary was found. They ask how much of it we're allowed to know. Now, as 3I, Atlas sweeps past the Sun and drifts outward again, the world waits. The official channels remain mute, but the object's trajectory is public. It's leaving us, moving back into the darkness from which it came, as if the encounter was intentional, brief, clinical, sufficient. Perhaps that was the point, to be seen, to be measured, to remind us that we're not the only architects of precision in the cosmos. Humanity, for all its noise, has been forced into its rarest state, quiet reflection. What if this was the universe's way of testing us, to see whether we can handle uncertainty without destroying ourselves in panic? Maybe the silence wasn't theirs at all, it was ours, a mirror showing how fragile our confidence becomes when the unknown looks back. Because in the end, every unanswered question about 3I, ATLAS leads to the same realization: the discovery has already happened. The moment the world's greatest powers agreed, without words, to stop talking, something monumental was confirmed. They may never admit what they found, but their behavior tells the story. Perhaps the loudest sound the cosmos has ever made is still unfolding, the echo of our collective pause, the shared heartbeat of a species realizing that knowledge can be more terrifying than ignorance. 3I. Atlas came, it was seen, and it left us with the most human of mysteries, not whether we are alone, but whether we are ready not to be.